Back when I was in my early 20s, I used to live at the student residence away from my family. I didn't really go out much. I usually just slammed beers and watched TV on the couch by myself. Occasionally my roommate Brad would join me, but most nights I was alone. Then one summer night, I was chugging down some beers and watching sports when Brad came to join me. After talking about the game for a bit, he suddenly asked me if I had heard of the Charlie Challenge. Apparently, it had been circulating the internet for a while. Brad explained that it was basically just a poor man's Ouija board. Instead of having to buy a whole board for it, you just use pencils and paper.
So, wanna play?
I decided that it couldn't hurt to give it a try. Yeah, let's do it. I felt a little uneasy and nervous after I agreed, but I was still intrigued. So, after a few more beers and small talk, the game finally ended, and we started to set up. We turned off the TV and lit a few candles. Then we got a piece of paper and wrote yes and no with a crisscross in between. After grabbing 2 pencils and placing them on the paper, we were done. As we sat down from across each other, the house was pitch black as we sat there and began asking questions.
Charlie, are you there?
The pencil slowly moved over to the yes. We both looked at each other in awe. Neither of us could believe it was actually working.
Charlie, can I play?
Charlie, can I play? The pencil pointed towards yes for both of us. Now we could really begin. We started asking random questions, whatever happened to come to mind. Will I become a millionaire?
Should I ask Stacy out?
It started out really exciting. We watched the pencil move back and forth between the yes and the no as we asked it more and more questions. But after a few minutes, we started to run out of things to say. Then, I suddenly got an idea for a question I could ask. Is Brad going to die? I thought it was just a funny joke, but Brad immediately blew up after that.
Why the hell would you say that, you idiot? What the hell's the matter with you?
Dude, it was just a joke, man.
You think that's funny? You're crazy!
Then out of nowhere, he grabbed me by my collar and completely snapped. I kept trying to tell him I was only kidding, but he wouldn't calm down. Then we saw the pencil point to yes. And that only made Brad go even more crazy.
You're such a pathetic freak, you little shit! Let's see how you like it!
Brad then asked Charlie if I would die, but the pencil pointed towards no, and he completely freaked out. He began banging on the table. Then he swiped the paper and pencils off in a rage. Finally, he flipped the whole table over and stormed off to his room. I tried to apologize, but Brad slammed the door in my face and told me to go to hell. I figured there was nothing else I could do, so I cleaned up the mess and went to my room to go to bed. I didn't understand why Brad would be so upset over a silly little game. I was sure Brad would cool off in the morning. After I calmed down a bit, I went to sleep. Later that night, I was awakened by a thud. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then I heard it again and again. It happened repeatedly. I checked the time and saw it was very late. I was confused. I had no idea what could be making that noise. Brad had never been up this late before, but he was the only other person there. I decided to get to the bottom of it, so I got out of bed and headed out into the hallway. It was pitch black. I was scared as hell. The last thing I wanted to do was walk further into the darkness, but the thud kept coming. After a few seconds of standing out in the hallway listening, I realized that the sound was definitely coming from Brad's room. I was still confused, but I walked over to Brad's room and pressed my ear to the door. I heard the thud sounds even clearer then. He had to be doing something in there. I slowly reached out my hand and knocked on the door. Brad, you okay? He didn't answer. All I could hear was the same thudding. Brad? I tried to open the door, and surprisingly it was unlocked. I immediately got out of there and ran towards the living room. As I ran, I tripped over a pencil on the floor and fell over. Then, I started wailing after that.
No! Oh God, no! No! No!
I went completely psycho and began crying like a maniac. I couldn't believe it. All that kept going through my head was that it was my fault. I had asked if he was going to die, and now it had happened. I laid there on the floor for several minutes, screaming and crying. Then, I finally stopped and looked over towards Brad's room. The thudding had stopped, but that was somehow even scarier than what I had just seen. Brad? Hello? All of a sudden, a psycho-demonic Brad came charging out of the room. The story was inspired by a disturbing article involving a 20-year-old that allegedly passed away in Al-Baida city in eastern Libya, as portrayed in the video. According to medical sources, the victim was brought to the Thora hospital in the city. Authorities in the eastern city have announced their investigation into 2 surviving cases, and the families of the dead have suggested that there's an association between the Charlie Charlie game and the cases, citing that the game may have made the victims do quote-unquote conjuring activities. The eastern authorities of Al-Baida slammed a ban on the Charlie Charlie game as a result. However, after going viral on social media, the investigation seemed weak in the eyes of the public, which made authorities announce that they are still investigating more into the issue.
It all started during the summer, when my friend Cameron and I both graduated high school. We wanted to do something big for our graduation, so we decided to go on a trip to the Bahamas with a bunch of other friends to celebrate the milestone on a cruise ship. I was excited to go with everyone, but I was a little weary of one of the guys going. His name was Steven. I didn't know the guy super well. He was a lot closer with Cameron, but he seemed like a big, annoying piece of trash. He was very rough around the edges and was always looking for a reason to get into a fight, but Cameron always liked him for some reason. I wasn't too happy about him coming on the cruise, but Cameron insisted. It was going to be a big boat anyways, so I hoped that I wouldn't have to interact with Steven too much. So when the time came, I packed up my bags and flew down to the Bahamas with the rest of the guys. From there, we got driven from the airport to the dock where we would board our cruise ship. I was really excited to get started with the trip and had decided to not let Steven ruin my time. He hadn't been too bad on the flight over, so I was hopeful that everything would be okay. We boarded the boat pretty early, but it wasn't set to leave the dock until that night. Throughout the day and the evening, we all ate and drank very heavily. The cruise was all inclusive, so we all got unlimited drinks and basically started drinking as soon as we got on the boat. It didn't take long for me, Cameron, and the rest of the guys to get absolutely shit-faced. We all began partying like crazy. Everything was going perfectly until nighttime. That's when the piece of shit Steven decided to start making trouble. He began picking fights with everyone because his dumb ass couldn't handle his alcohol. At first, people just ignored him and tried to continue to party, but he quickly went from mildly annoying to a total asshole. He came up to me and started cussing at me and pushing me to do a dare. I refused as I knew he would just try to make me do something stupid as hell. I tried to avoid him, but he kept following me around and pushing me to give in. I continued to refuse and got pretty upset, but I didn't want to start an actual fight as I knew that Steven would beat me up due to how big he was. I didn't know what I had done to make Steven so eager to pick on me, but he wouldn't let up.
Come on, sissy. What are you so scared of?
Finally, Cameron decided to intervene.
Alright, that's enough, man. Back the hell off. Oh yeah? You're fighting his battles for him now? Or maybe you want to do the dare. Is that it? Alright, I will.
I tried to tell Cameron not to do it, but he pushed me away. Steven seemed surprised that Cameron had actually agreed. Then, he started smiling like a psycho and dared Cameron to jump off the boat. Everyone egged Cameron on, of course, as they were all drunk out of their minds. Cameron seemed ready to do it, but I had a bad feeling about it. It was dark as hell out there, and you couldn't see shit in the sea. I tried to convince Cameron not to go through with it, but then Steven grabbed me by the collar and threatened to beat the shit out of me if I kept getting in the middle of them. I was about to say something back to him, but Cameron pulled Steven off of me and said that he would jump off the boat. I could tell he was still drunk as hell, but he seemed determined. He stripped down in his drunken stupor and then actually jumped off the boat. Everyone ran to the edge of the boat and took their phones out to take pictures or videos. Some shined their lights down on the water to try and see where he was, but it was impossible to see Cameron in the darkness. I was scared shitless.
Cameron, can you hear me?
It was so dark, and the waves were crazy. I didn't see how he was going to make it back. I pulled out my phone and shined the light everywhere, desperately trying to catch sight of him. That's when I saw him. It was still hard to make him out, but he looked like he was attempting to swim back, but struggling.
Help! Help me! These waves are way too strong!
We all immediately started panicking, and everyone regretted urging him to do something so stupid. We alerted the captain to shine the spotlight down on the water so that we could see Cameron better. The captain immediately found him in the water and threw a buoy down. Cameron started to panic even more as the current seemed to be getting worse and worse.
Help! It's pulling me away! Cameron, hold on! Ah!
Then my heart dropped as I caught sight of the one thing that everyone had to have been fearing. I saw the top part of a shark swimming towards Cameron. It looked like a fin or something around that cutting through the water.
Cameron, look out!
Then the shark appeared fully and lunged at him.
No, Cameron!
That's when Cameron disappeared completely out of view. We didn't know if he had been eaten or drowned. We all assumed that the shark had taken him. The video and story went viral on the internet not long after. One of the other guys there posted it. I was traumatized forever after that. I lost my friend, and it was all because of some stupid dare. This story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding a video that may have revealed the last words said by 18-year-old Cameron Robbins as he jumped off a cruise ship, never to be seen again. Cameron graduated high school last summer and went on a cruise with his friends to celebrate the huge milestone. On the trip in the Bahamas, Cameron was filmed jumping into the ocean water at night. In a video of the incident, which has claimed to be a dare, Cameron was seen in the water after witnesses said he jumped overboard at around 9:40 p.m. He was last seen paddling around in the water before disappearing from view, with the boat staying in place for several hours in an attempt to find the teen. Official search attempts for Cameron were called off when they were unable to locate him in the water. The video of Cameron swimming went viral following his disappearance, and some viewers believe they'd even spotted something moving in the water which could have been a shark. The footage also contained the last words that Cameron may have shouted before going missing that night. Several people on the boat could be heard shouting to him that he's swimming away from the buoy, which would have helped him keep afloat in the sea. He then vanished from the view of the panicked onlookers. To this day, Cameron's body is yet to be recovered, and a shark expert believes it's unlikely it ever will be. While his family haven't been able to properly lay Cameron to rest, they held a memorial for him in the weeks that followed his disappearance. This all happened years ago. At that time, I was in my early teens. My parents and I went on vacation to New York that summer. We got an Airbnb somewhere in Manhattan, and we all had a lot of fun for the first couple of days. Then one night, we decided to visit Times Square. It was obviously a very popular spot for tourists. When we got there, it was already very crowded. It was hard for me to believe that so many people could be in one spot, and it made it difficult to navigate our way around. By that time, I was old enough to have a phone. Because of that, they didn't really mind if I went around by myself, just as long as I gave them notice of where I was and made sure not to leave the area completely. So, while my parents looked at stuff that I wasn't really interested in, I strolled around and took a lot of photos of different things that caught my eye. During that night, there were all kinds of people around. Tourists, locals, homeless people, cops, drunkies, druggies, performers. There were even people dressed up in costumes. There was everything that you would expect to see in Times Square. I saw a lot of interesting people, but there was one person in particular that caught my eye. It was someone dressed as Mickey Mouse, but there was something strange about this Mickey. The face of the costume looked off. It was honestly kind of creepy, which felt strange for a Mickey costume. He looked so strange that I couldn't help but stare at the guy, and the more I stared at him, the creepier and weirder he looked. Then it got even eerier when I noticed that the guy was staring back at me. Out of everyone else that was there, the whole situation was so weird and freaky. I just stood in my one spot having a stare off with Mickey Mouse. I was just about to turn around and look at something else when out of nowhere, the Mickey Mouse started charging towards me. Then he started screaming and yelling in my face.
Pay me for taking a picture!
I tried to tell him that I hadn't done anything, but he just kept yelling and accusing me of taking a photo of him.
That'll be $20! Now pay up! Now!
I started shitting bricks. The guy was a psycho. I tried to break free from his hands, but he wouldn't let me go. He just kept telling me to pay him over and over again. After several seconds of struggling, I finally managed to break free and run off into the crowd. Everyone watched me in awe as I sprinted away from the maniac. I thought for sure that Mickey was going to chase after me, but as I looked back, he was just standing there, staring at me. I somehow found my parents a few meters away taking pictures of the skyscrapers, and I decided that I wouldn't tell them about what happened. I didn't want them to worry, so I just shook it off and pleaded with my parents to head home early. They were reluctant to go at first, but I managed to convince them, and my dad got us an Uber back to the Airbnb. I just decided to sweep the whole incident under the rug and act like it never happened. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, I tossed and turned in my bed. I was having trouble sleeping as I kept having nightmares about the Mickey Mouse. It was still the creepiest thing that I had ever seen. Every time that I was about to fall asleep, a picture of that creepy mask would flash in my mind, and I would get startled awake. Then, to make it all worse, I started hearing noises in my room. I tried to just ignore them and go to sleep, but I kept hearing them more and more. I assumed that they were only creaks and wanted to just sleep it off, but it was hard not to listen to them. Then the noises got even louder. I suddenly woke up in fear and jolted up in my bed. I was sure that there was something in my room by that point. I could feel my heart beating faster and faster as I looked around to see what could be making all of the sounds. Then I saw something in the corner of my room masked in the darkness. It looked like the same scary-ass Mickey Mouse, standing there and staring at me like an utter creep. I was shitting bricks. I sat there in my bed, perfectly still, in total silence and fear. I couldn't understand how he had found me. I didn't know if I was just seeing things or if the psycho had somehow broken into the Airbnb. Then out of nowhere, the Mickey Mouse charged and grabbed me by the collar again.
Pay me now! You have to pay me for taking my picture!
I kept yelling and screaming as the Mickey began to shake me around and demand that I pay him.
Help! Mom! Dad! Help me!
The Mickey Mouse then pushed me away and ran out of my room and down the stairs. A few seconds later, my parents came rushing in and asked me what was wrong. I quickly explained what had happened and my dad immediately called the cops. The Mickey was gone by the time they got there, but they found him a block down the street and arrested him. It was all over after that, but it was years before I stopped having nightmares about him. I'm still traumatized by Mickey Mouse to this day. I don't think I'll ever fully forget that night. This story was inspired by a creepy incident regarding a man dressed as Mickey Mouse that got arrested in Times Square for harassing a teen. The Mickey Mouse culprit had allegedly harassed the victim and his father for money for a photo they had never taken. The culprit's name was never disclosed, but it has been mentioned that he had stalked the teen and was taken into custody after the outburst. This is easily one of the most disturbing and gut-wrenching stories that people will ever hear, and it happened to me not too long ago. I haven't been the same since that day. It all happened in the summer of this year. I live in Sochi, Russia, and I had been dating my girlfriend for about 2 years at that point. Since it was summer, the two of us had been visiting the beach a lot. It was our favorite thing to do whenever we felt like getting out of the house. I would usually pick my girlfriend up, and then we would drive over to the beach and spend the whole day there. It was about 30 minutes away from where my girlfriend lived. When we got there, we would park in a nearby lot and then walk over to the beach and find a spot to set up our stuff. The beach was always crazy busy, and there were usually a ton of people. It made sense, of course, as it was summer. We didn't love all the crowds, but we just made the best of it. The two of us would swim, take walks, or just lie out on the sand and tan. It was a little annoying that it wasn't as private as we would have liked though. Still, we kept going back. One afternoon, we were hanging out together at my girlfriend's place when we decided that we wanted to head over to the beach again. The only problem was that when I checked the forecast, I saw that the weather was going to be bad. There was supposed to be a huge storm later that day with lots of rain. My girlfriend still wanted to go despite the weather. I told her that she was crazy to want to go to the beach during a storm, but she kept begging me to go. She said that the beach would be way more empty and less packed this time around since it was going to rain. I was still hesitant, but I finally gave in and went along with it. I thought that it could be fun to be at the beach when it wasn't so crowded. So we got in the car and drove over. It wasn't raining yet as we drove, but it was already cloudy and gloomy outside. I could tell that it was going to be a shitty day, but I knew that it just made it even more likely that no one would be out. We finally arrived at the beach and parked the car. As we walked up, we found that the beach was pretty empty as we had expected. There were maybe a dozen people scattered around, but it was nothing to what it usually was. We both got pretty excited. We decided that we would try to swim before the storm, so we started getting ready, but the weather began acting up almost immediately. It started getting windy as hell, and a little rainy too. The waves looked a little wild as well. We didn't care too much though. We figured we could just walk along the water if it was too crazy to swim. I got down to my swim trunks just in case I swam later on, but my girlfriend just left her dress on. Then we headed down and started walking close to the shore. The water was even more wild the closer we got to it. It was splashing all over the place, and the waves were getting pretty big, but we didn't mind getting splashed a little. We were just happy to be out together without the crowds. We walked along the shore and talked about random topics. Then after a while, we were contemplating swimming again, but we second-guessed it as the waves and current were only getting worse. It was definitely starting to storm by that point. As we continued to walk and talk, we began getting splashed a lot by the waves. We just laughed it off though. It was already raining anyway, and we didn't mind getting wet. We just continued to walk as the storm got even worse. But what happened next is the most disturbing thing ever. The waves were getting bigger and bigger when, out of nowhere, a huge wave came crashing down on top of us, knocking us both to the ground.
What the hell was that? Babe, are you okay? Where are you?
That's when I saw her. She was being pulled out into the water.
I'm coming!
I stumbled to my feet and tried to run over to her, but another huge wave came and splashed me down again. I felt like I was going to drown. The waves were so strong, and they kept pushing me down over and over again. I finally managed to get up. I desperately looked around for my girlfriend, but I couldn't find her. I started panicking like crazy.
Where are you? Hello? Babe? Where are you?
She was nowhere to be found. All I could see was the water crashing around me. I started screaming frantically for help, hoping someone else would be able to find her.
Somebody help me! Help!
I finally managed to get out of the water and call the police, but it was too late. They couldn't find her. She was lost. Not long after that day, some footage of what happened got released. It was allegedly captured by a nearby beachgoer that had witnessed the whole thing. I was completely traumatized. The footage just allowed me to relive the horrible ordeal over and over again. I can't help but think that I could have prevented the whole thing if I hadn't let us go to the beach that day. She would still be here with me. This story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding a shocking video of a woman being swept away in the ocean. The incident occurred on a Wednesday in Sochi, Russia, while the woman, aged 20, was walking on the beach with her boyfriend. The couple can be seen strolling down the beach holding hands when they approach the shore. It seems it was a particularly stormy day, as a series of violent waves began crashing down along the beach. The couple attempted to move away, and while the man is able to escape, the woman is swept away. Although she resurfaces again, another wave crashes down and the woman disappears. Realizing what was happening, the man can be seen frantically running along the beach, searching for his girlfriend and attempting to rescue her. Totally helpless, the man struggles to find her as he paces along the shore. According to reports, a search has now begun for the woman, but so far has been unsuccessful. Rescuers have expanded their search, but unfortunately, she has not been found. They were last seen together in the video. People have been left horrified by the video on social media since.
I was a lifeguard at a water park called Wild Waves for several years, but I was recently fired for a tragic accident. For the most part, the job was boring. I spent the majority of my time there watching over one of the pools where people would land at the end of a slide, one of the ones where they went down on a tube. I had my fair share of time where I had to save people, but it was fairly uncommon because most people who go to a water park know how to swim, or they wear life jackets if they can. There were also 2 other lifeguards in the area. One day, on a particularly slow afternoon, I was sitting in the tower watching cute girls go by and looking out for drowners, when all of a sudden I saw something I wasn't used to seeing. There was a morbidly obese man slowly making his way up the stairs of the water slide. I could see him struggling with every step. He stopped after every single one to catch his breath for about a minute.
Why isn't there a damn elevator for the slide?
It was quite the show, even though it was a bit sad to see somebody so far gone. On top of that, the more likely it seemed that he would make it to the top, the more concerned I got. If he actually managed to climb all those steps, the attendants were most likely going to tell him to go back down because he was too fat to ride the slide. I could only imagine the entitled rage they would have to deal with in that situation, so I knew they might let him pass just to avoid it. In that case, if he was even able to reach over his planetary waistline and hold on to it too, he would have to fit inside the slide. I seriously doubted he would be able to, but I knew he would try anyway. If by some miracle he managed to get in and didn't get stuck on the way down, the resulting splash would be like a tsunami. It took the man over an hour to reach the top, which was honestly an achievement in itself. I couldn't hear exactly what they were saying, but I was watching closely, admittedly not paying very much attention to the pool. I spoke with the attendants afterwards and they told me what happened.
Sir, your waistline exceeds the circumference of the slide. I can't let you in.
That's ridiculous. This is the one thing I came here to do. It took me too damn long to climb those stairs for you people to tell me no. You better push me into that slide because it's the only way I'm going down. Unless it's on your mother.
He threatened to sit at the entrance of the slide and block it for everyone. Knowing the 2 of them would never be able to drag him away on their own, they gave up. The first tube they gave him popped. They had to partially deflate the next donut so the pressure from him sitting on it wouldn't be too much. But I bet to a man like that it was more like sitting on a Cheerio. Watching it all go down, I started to worry if the slide could even support his weight, or if maybe it would collapse. I heard him screaming at the attendants to help him get through. They pushed as hard as they could, but he wasn't moving. Then, one of them had the bright idea to use sunscreen as a lube. They used the entire bottle, but it was finally enough after a handful of irritated guests in line behind helped them push. It was a nail-biting few seconds hoping he didn't get stuck, but somehow he made it.
Ah! I haven't moved this fast since high school gym class!
As I expected, the splash was enormous. Everyone was in shock and awe. Unfortunately, when the initial tidal wave subsided, something had become painfully obvious. The man had sunk like a gigantic stone. I blew my whistle to evacuate the pool. Then I climbed down the tower and jumped in to save him. He was all the way at the bottom of the deep end. My puny little flotation device wasn't nearly enough to lift him up. I tried everything I could to get him to the surface, pulling him up, lifting him up from underneath, but there was no chance I could lift him. I had to come up for breath. I shouted for help from the other lifeguards, but when they came over, they didn't believe me.
Help me! This guy's like 1,000 pounds! I can't lift him up! But he's underwater. Shouldn't he be lighter? Are you kidding? Look at him! Just get in here and help me!
After wasting precious seconds arguing with me, they finally got in. With the help of 2 other lifeguards, we managed to slowly drag him back up. Tragically, by then, I could already see that the life had drained from his eyes. It took us a few more minutes to finally heave him up and out of the pool, but he wasn't breathing. I tried to perform CPR, but I couldn't do any effective compressions on him through the thick layer of fat on his chest. We couldn't even find the spots to attach the electrodes of the defibrillator among all the flaps and folds of his skin. By the time the paramedics finally arrived, all they could do was confirm that it was too late. It's been months since that day. We all got fired, and the park was temporarily shut down. The owners of the park and all the employees who were present are being sued by the family. I don't disagree that there were several mistakes made that day. However, I don't believe I was part of the problem. He should never have even been allowed in the park, let alone to ride the slide. Maybe if my coworkers hadn't bickered with me instead of helping immediately, we could have saved him. I already feel bad enough that he died on my watch, but now I have to deal with being sued for the pennies left in my bank account after losing my job. I don't need that happening to me. What I need is therapy. The story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding a 33-year-old man who drowned at a water park in Washington State, raising questions about the competence of the lifeguards employed there. The tragedy occurred at Wild Waves, a theme park located a few miles northeast of Tacoma. The water park pool where the drowning occurred was closed to visitors on Sunday. The man was rumored to be near 6 feet tall and was described to have a heavy-set build. He was last seen alive in one of the activity pools. Witnesses say lifeguards on the scene were slow to react when it was apparent that the man was underwater and in danger. The lifeguards were said to have been combative, indecisive, and arguing amongst themselves about what to do next, wasting precious minutes as the man's life hung in the balance. When first responders tried to resuscitate the man, it was too late. The identity of the victim has not been released for publication. When I first got married, I thought I had found the person that would make me happy for the rest of my life. That feeling didn't last long, though. It's amazing how quickly someone can change after getting married. Years later, I couldn't even remember why we got married in the first place. I hated her more than anything. The only reason that I even stuck around was because we had a daughter together. She was the only good thing that came out of our relationship. If it wasn't for her, I would have just walked away years ago. I forced myself to stay even though I couldn't stand the sight of my wife anymore. I didn't want a divorce either because a lawyer was way too expensive. Besides, the bitch would just end up getting child support and alimony from me for the rest of my life. There really was nothing about her that was appealing to me anymore. She used to be hot when we first got married, but then she completely let herself go. She got really disgusting. Most of the time, she would just lay around like a sack of shit and drink Kool-Aid all day. She never once lifted a finger to help around the house either. She just lived off me and unemployment checks while she sat on her ass all day. I despised everything about her. She was totally useless. And what's more, she was always angry at everyone too. What she had to complain about, I didn't know. It was honestly better that she was always in a bad mood though, because it meant that she didn't really want anything to do with me either. I couldn't imagine what I would do if she still wanted to be physical together. I couldn't even get it up for her anymore. She just got worse and worse every day, too. Not only was she lazy and gross, she also started using all this medication. That only made her worse. I was a dead man walking every day. I felt like my life was slowly crumbling away. Then one day, I had enough. I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep providing for someone that made me loathe my own life. That's when I decided the only bill I was going to pay for from now on was her funeral. I started looking at ways to kill her after that. After some research, I found a way to poison her drink that I figured would work perfectly. All she ever did was drink Kool-Aid anyways. She would have no idea what I had done. So I gathered the necessary supplies over the next few days, prepared the poison. Then one night, I went into the living room, where she always sat. I asked her if she wanted some more Kool-Aid. She looked even more terrible than usual.
Of course I do, you idiot. Took you long enough to ask.
Chill out, Kool-Aid man. I was just trying to be nice. I fought back the urge to scream at her. I knew that I couldn't blow it now. I didn't want to give any reason for her to be suspicious. Besides, if everything worked out, I would never have to speak to her again. That's when I went back into the kitchen and made some more Kool-Aid. Then I carefully mixed in the poison. It disappeared completely when I poured it in. I couldn't help but smile at how simple the whole thing was. After preparing it, I brought it over to my wife and handed her the glass. My wife snatched the glass out of my hand and started gulping it down. I watched as she drank every last drop. Then I waited expectantly. But to my surprise, nothing happened. She was completely fine. I couldn't believe it. I was so sure that I was going to be rid of her, but it didn't work. I was furious. I wasn't going to let that stop me though. The next night I tried again, but this time I doubled the dose just to make sure that it would be enough. This time I didn't even ask if she wanted any. I just prepared the poison and brought her the glass. I knew the bitch was too greedy to refuse it. Of course I was right. She immediately drank the whole thing just like before. This time I was sure that it would work. I stared at her, waiting for the poison to kick in. But again, nothing happened.
I completely lost my shit at that point. It wasn't fair. Why wasn't it working? I snapped and started screaming at her.
Why won't you die already? Just die!
Then I realized that something was starting to happen. She started to convulse violently in her chair and foam at the mouth. It was finally working. I watched through the whole thing. I'd honestly never seen a more beautiful sight. A few minutes later, it was over. She was dead.
I thought everything was going to be perfect after that. I got rid of her body and that was that. My life could finally begin again, but my happiness was short-lived. Her family started trying to get in contact with her after they didn't hear from her for a few weeks. It didn't take long for them to find out she was dead and call the police. I turned myself in almost as soon as they questioned me. I knew that there was no point in denying what I had done. I went to jail just a little over a month after my wife had died. That's how long I got to live again. At one point I managed to escape. It was during the 4th of July fireworks show. All of the commotion allowed me to slip away. But I knew I couldn't be on the run for long. They caught me a couple days later and brought me back. Now I'm stuck drinking crappy Kool-Aid in jail for the rest of my life. The story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding a southern Missouri man who was convicted of killing his wife by giving her Kool-Aid laced with prescription drugs. Jurors found 37-year-old Jason McClurg of Winona guilty of the death of 32-year-old Stephanie McClurg. Court records show he looked up overdose information online and that his first effort to poison her didn't work, so he tried again. He was also convicted of escaping from the Shannon County Jail after his arrest. The escape happened when he and other inmates were taken outside to watch a 4th of July fireworks show. He was captured a couple days later at a camper trailer near his hometown. I've been a flight attendant for several years now. My main route is between LA and Taipei, Taiwan. I occasionally get to go to other locations, but almost all my work is done between those two cities. I'm the chief stewardess and spend most of my time in business class. The passengers are usually nice and don't cause problems, but there are exceptions. The flight between LA and Taiwan is over 15 hours long, which is like spending an entire day in the air, so I do my best to accommodate the passengers to help them be more comfortable. Most requests are perfectly reasonable, but one passenger made a request that I never thought I would hear. One evening, my colleagues and I were setting up the cabin for boarding before a late-night departure out of LA. As usual, those with disabilities are allowed to board first. There was only one movement-impaired passenger in the business class section that night. He rolled down the gangway on a mobility scooter but was forced to leave it behind. The moment he stepped through the door, the entire place smelled like feces. I turned my head to see the source of the odor, and saw the most disgusting excuse for a human being I've ever seen. He was over 400 pounds and could barely walk. He squeezed himself down the aisle and held onto the seats for support until he finally sat down. He snapped his fingers and ordered me to get his carry-on and stow it for him. I unfortunately had to accommodate him. As I lifted the bag into the overhead bin, I saw him eyeing me up and down. I knew none of my colleagues were safe. The entire flight crew, apart from the pilots, were female, and it was clear he hadn't had any positive relationship with a woman in many years.
I'd love to stay in the hotel with you during my layover. I've got yellow fever, and waiting to blow my savings in Thailand is gonna take too long. And that's not the only thing I'm gonna blow either. You know what a ladyboy is? Or a ping pong show? You're really missing out if you don't.
Sir, please stop it.
All my colleagues had similar interactions with him. After 2 agonizing hours, we caught a break as we dimmed the lights for the night. But about an hour into the flight, that creep got up to use the bathroom, but I did not expect him to start yelling for help.
Help! Somebody get in here and help me! Hurry!
Sir, what's the problem?
Get in here and wipe my ass!
What? Sir, that's not happening.
Yes, it is! I can't do it myself!
You got 2 hands. Now leave me the hell alone.
Hey, bitch! Do you have any idea how much I paid for my ticket? This is business class! Now, you're gonna take care of my business. Or I'm gonna spread my cheeks and wipe it all over the floor. Is that what you want? You wanna get sprayed with my pad thai shit bricks?
All right, I'll do it. Just let me go.
That's what I thought, you lazy bimbo.
I didn't want to do it, but I felt like I had to. We were over the middle of the Pacific Ocean. We had nowhere to land to kick him out, which gave him plenty of time to escalate the situation. As the chief stewardess, I couldn't force my colleagues to do it, so I prepared as best as I could. I put on 3 pairs of latex gloves. Then I headed to the lavatory.
There she is. Come on over here, baby. Don't be shy.
Please, just be quiet.
Oh, yeah. That's it right there, baby. Get that sticky crumb out of there. Oh, yeah.
Oh, God. There. I did it.
Not quite. You missed a spot. You gotta get deep into that crack and get all of it out.
What?
Stop wasting time or it's gonna get crusty. I'll spread my cheeks to make it easier for you since you don't know how to wipe an ass.
You should really shower more.
Stop criticizing me and get me clean for the lady boys.
Okay, I'm doing it.
Oh, yeah. Keep going. Keep going. Did you just puke on me, you stupid nasty hoe?
I'm sorry.
Come here and clean that up. Hey, get off me! Don't touch me! This is assault!
That sick, disgusting creep locked himself in the lavatory for several minutes, eventually returning to his seat. He remained under close supervision for the rest of the flight. On the other hand, I spent most of the rest of the flight crying in another lavatory, desperately trying to get clean. The first thing I did when we landed was take a long, hot shower. The creep was blacklisted from the airline. He ended up making it to Thailand, where I presumed he found another flight back home. However, months later, I learned that he died of unknown causes. I celebrated happily, but I'm no less traumatized by what he did. The story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding an obese American tourist who made headlines when he forced an air hostess to wipe his butt. On an LA to Taipei EVA air flight, the man left several stewardesses traumatized when he demanded they help him in the lavatory by insisting they help him remove his pants and wipe his butt. After repeated attempts to inform the man that he was blacklisted from flying on the airline in the future, a lawyer informed Taiwan's EVA Air that he was dead. According to Taiwan News, the lawyer said the man died sometime in March due to an unspecified illness while on a lengthy beach holiday in Thailand. The man had been booked on another EVA Air flight from Taipei to San Francisco, and the airline spent 3 months trying to reach him to tell him it wouldn't be taking him. At a press conference, a teary-eyed EVA Air flight attendant described how she was left mentally traumatized after the man, who claimed to have had recent surgery on his hand, asked them to pull down his pants so he could use the bathroom. In an Instagram post after the disgusting episode, the flight attendant said she locked herself inside the bathroom, crying and vomiting, unable to wash away the stench of the man's crap. The accused man, who was confined to a wheelchair and was estimated to weigh 440 pounds, reportedly threatened to relieve himself on the floor unless the all-female cabin crew helped him. It was mentioned in a shocking revelation that the man allegedly moaned as he was being wiped. The airline will reportedly refund the man's family for his unused airfare. When I was a teenager, my parents and I lived in an old house in a small town in Pennsylvania. My family wasn't the wealthiest. My parents worked hard and provided everything they could. I had small luxuries like a used Xbox 360, but the one thing I wanted more than anything else was to go to Disney World. I had been obsessed with it my whole life. Unfortunately, I knew it would probably never happen because my family couldn't afford it. It didn't stop me from begging my parents to go to Disney World for years. I always hoped they were secretly saving up money to surprise me one day, but sadly, that day never came. However, my parents did something for me unexpectedly. On my birthday, my dad took me to pick up a cake. The cake was Mickey Mouse themed, which gave me a sign of what was to come. When we got back to the house, I was surprised by all my friends and family standing in the backyard. They managed to set up a whole cookout for my birthday while I was gone. Everything was great, except there was just one thing that was off. Standing towards the back in the middle of the crowd was a large Mickey Mouse mascot. I was never a fan of mascots. The way their faces don't change and the fact that there's a person in there you can't see always gave me the creeps. The Mickey Mouse that day made every other mascot I'd seen seem normal by comparison. The suit looked dingy and cheap. There were a few stains on it too. I didn't really want to go near him, but I made myself go along with it to avoid acting ungrateful. I walked up to meet him after setting the cake down. The Mickey Mouse looked creepy as hell. There was just something not right about it. I avoided him for the rest of the party, but the weirdo kept staring at me. I figured it was because of my birthday, but something about this Mickey Mouse just didn't seem right. I tried to get a sense of what other people thought of him, but somehow, nobody else was alarmed by his presence. As the evening progressed, everyone transitioned indoors. The adults went down to the basement, where I knew they would be drinking, and the younger bunch, including my friends and cousins, sat in the living room and played video games for a while. Annoyingly, the Mickey Mouse mascot lingered near us. I can recall him just pacing around and staring more at us than the TV. I did my best to ignore him. At some point, the mascot was nowhere to be seen. I figured he went downstairs where the adults were, so I got up to take a piss.
Hey, who's there? This isn't funny, guys! You made me pause my piss! Whoever's there, you're a pervert! I know it's one of you idiots! If you want to see it so bad, fine! Take it all in, you little shit! And I'm not gonna flush, cause it's my birthday! You got that? What the hell? Go away! Somebody help me! Mickey Mouse is looking at my pecker and watching me take a leak! Get the hell out of here, you pervert!
That hurt, you little birthday shit!
What the hell do you want from me?
Well, first you could start by not shouting. I hope you don't mind if I use the bathroom with you. I really enjoyed your technique. Would you like to see mine?
No! Leave me alone or I'm calling the cops! Somebody help me!
Shut up, bitch! We'll rock your world! Or should I say rock your Disney World?
What the hell does that even mean?
Allow me to demonstrate. On you!
Let go of me, you old shit ass! Stop squirming!
I've been waiting to get in your birthday suit all night!
I ran down the hall, screaming for help. I went into the basement and told my parents what was happening. They were visibly drunk, so it took them a moment to process what I was saying. But when they finally got it, my dad went upstairs and confronted the mascot. That's when he charged at him, wrestling him to the ground. Moments later, more adults came up from the basement and helped keep him down until the police arrived. The old man was later arrested and taken away in a cruiser. It was later revealed that he was notorious for assaulting multiple victims in past parties he was hired for. I've been traumatized by Mickey Mouse ever since. The story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding a Pennsylvania man who dresses Mickey Mouse for children's birthday parties. He was accused of assaulting 5 male victims. The Delaware County District Attorney's Office announced the arrest of Michael Cripps, 43 years old, of Colwyn, Pennsylvania. The allegations date back 7 years. Authorities were concerned the allegations were the tip of the iceberg. When asked if he was guilty in the courthouse, Cripps shouted no. Whelan said Cripps ran a business called MC Parties, where he would dress as characters such as Mickey Mouse, Elmo, and SpongeBob SquarePants. The district attorney said there was no evidence he met any of his victims through his business. However, it was alleged that Cripps targeted single or divorced moms with young boys and volunteered to babysit. Cripps would reportedly become furious if his victims refused or resisted his advances. Cripps was held on a $250,000 bail and awaits preliminary hearings.
This story happened a few years ago and still traumatizes me to this day. It happened back when me and my brother used to live with our mom. Our dad was never around, so it was just the three of us in the household. My mom was far from the right type of person to raise kids. Neither of us feel safe around her. My mom has always had serious issues, but she changes a lot day to day. On an average day, she's tolerable, but she's still barely there on the inside. I usually step up to be the actual parent in the house. If it were up to my mom, we would all starve, because all she gave us was Kool-Aid. She was a garbage person, a real piece of shit. Most of the time, she sits around like a statue, slowly decaying until she looks like she smokes 100 packs a day. Then, without any warning, she'll get up and throw a fit for an entire day straight, screaming about nonsense and wrecking everything in the house. Whenever that happens, the next 24 hours is a guaranteed trip to hell. I'm convinced that my mom has gone off the deep end. Recently, she had started doing something different. Her bedroom is at the end of the hall, so whenever my brother or I leave our room, we would see her creepy ass in the darkness. It was fine when she hid with her door closed, but now she sits at the foot of her bed with the door wide open, staring down the hallway, never moving or blinking, sometimes twitching like a creep. Her sheets are covered in Kool-Aid packets and empty bottles of the medication she's supposed to take, so we both know it's only a matter of time before her next episode. The other night, after this had been going on for almost 2 weeks, the dread was killing me. I'd been doing everything I could to avoid leaving my room, but that night, I couldn't sleep because I desperately needed to use the bathroom. I had no other choice but to go out there.
What are you doing? You can't go out there. I have to. Just pretend like you're asleep, okay? I'll be back in a few minutes. Be careful. I will.
Hi, Mom. Sorry I'm up. I just really needed to use the bathroom.
Mom? What do you want? Mom? What's the matter with you?
What's going on?
I have no idea. That bitch is a psycho. I'm sorry. Did I scare my babies? How about a nice large glass of Kool-Aid, boys? Oh, yeah!
Thanks, Mom.
Tastes like shit!
Mom, something about this Kool-Aid doesn't taste right.
Drink the Kool-Aid or else you'll have to drink the milk from my beanbags!
Okay, okay.
The next day, my brother and I woke up in the hospital. That crazy bitch had poisoned the Kool-Aid she gave us. We almost didn't make it. The only thing that saved us was a 911 call I made that I didn't even remember doing. My mom was arrested, and my brother and I were taken from her custody. It was later found out that her mental illness had severely worsened, and that she was unmedicated at the time, so her sentence was slightly reduced, but she still faces years in prison and decades of close psychiatric supervision. My brother and I have been staying with some relatives ever since. Things have been much better without them, but neither of us will ever forget what happened that night. And we certainly won't be touching Kool-Aid for the rest of our lives. This story was inspired by a horrific Kool-Aid incident regarding a woman who pled guilty in giving prescription medication mixed into Kool-Aid to her daughters. The suspect was a 43-year-old woman named Shakina Lawton, who had a history of mental health problems and is to undergo a psychiatric evaluation before she's sentenced. In court, Lawton pled guilty in the attempted assassinations. It was mentioned that Lawton would serve concurrent prison sentences and that she would undergo a psychiatric evaluation. It was alleged that Lawton brought the victims into the kitchen, told them to sit down, and gave them Kool-Aid with the medication mixed into it. One of the victims then called 911 and told dispatchers that her mother was trying to poison the pair. The victims have since been in the custody of relatives.
This all happened back in the mid-2000s, back when I was in high school. At that time, everyone was talking about this Charlie game that was all over the internet. I hadn't heard much about it myself, but I had seen a couple videos of it. It was a big popular thing at the time. Rumor had it that it was the next Bloody Mary. The game involved balancing two pencils on top of each other and putting them on top of a piece of paper that has yes and no written on it. Then you were supposed to ask questions and watch to see if the pencil moved to one of the answers. There were videos of people playing the game all over the internet, and it was hard to tell if any of it was real. I normally hung out with these two guys, Riley and Justin, and this one girl, Joanna. For some reason, they thought the game was the coolest thing they had ever seen. The three of them pushed me to do it at my place, since I had the best house out of all of us. Plus, I was an only child and just lived with my dad, so we could have the house to ourselves since he always worked nights. I told them I didn't want to do something so dangerous and freaky, but they kept pushing me.
Oh, come on, you wuss. Stop being a chicken shit.
Yeah, don't be a wimp.
I eventually gave in, even though I was still scared. We agreed to do it at my place Friday night. When the time came, I invited my friends over and we all hung out and ate pizza until my dad left for work. We played a few random games and watched some TV while we waited. Eventually, my dad left. After we were sure he was gone, we finally began setting up the game. We grabbed some pencils and drew a cross with the words yes and no on a piece of paper. Then my friends lit a candle and turned off all the lights in the house. I was scared shitless the whole time we were getting the game ready, but my friends kept laughing and making jokes.
This is going to be so sick.
You think the pencil's actually gonna move?
Yeah, what are you going to ask first?
Finally, everything was ready, and we sat down to play. They pushed me to ask the first question.
You have to ask Charlie if he's here. Go ahead, you first.
Guys, I really don't think—
Oh my god, just do it already! Stop trying to ruin everything!
I reluctantly asked the question, feeling incredibly uneasy. Charlie, are you there? We waited for a few seconds, holding our breath, but nothing happened. I immediately ripped into my friends, telling them that I knew it was a hoax the whole time. But then suddenly, the pencil moved to yes. Oh my god.
Did you see that?
I was scared as hell. I was then forced to ask Charlie if I can play. But oddly enough, the pencil moved to no. That meant I couldn't play. Then my friends all asked if they could play, and the pencil moved to yes for each of them. They were all good to play. They all excitedly started asking Charlie questions. Are you in this room right now?
Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Okay, me next. Charlie, do you know my name?
I watched in terror as they kept asking more and more questions. The pencil would move back and forth between yes and no each time as it answered them. It all started out innocent enough, but then my friends' questions started to change. They went from normal fun stuff to really strange and dark.
Charlie, have you ever killed anyone?
Charlie, do you like hurting people? That's when I started to get really freaked out. Why are you guys asking it this stuff? Then, suddenly, my friend Jason asked it the most terrifying thing yet.
Charlie, should we kill our friend?
I thought he was joking at first, but his face was dead serious. Jason, what are you saying? The pencil slowly moved to yes. All three of them turned and looked at me. They all had the creepiest looks on their faces. They didn't even look like themselves. Guys, what's going on? That's when they went insane. They all leaped up and began running around the room trashing stuff.
What are you doing? Stop it, this isn't funny!
I watched in horror as they started to look like actual demons themselves. Their faces looked scary as hell. Their eyes didn't even look human anymore. Their voices sounded demonic as they laughed and yelled.
Guys, what's happening to you? Please, stop this!
Then, out of nowhere, they all lunged at me. I ran out of the house and down the street, screaming hysterically for help. I didn't even stop to see if they were chasing after me. I was so scared that I just kept running. Eventually, I came to my senses. I ran up to a random house and banged on the door, begging them to call the cops. When the cops and an ambulance arrived, They found my 3 friends roaming the street. They were acting hysterical and psychotic. They were apprehended and taken to the hospital. Later on, it was ruled by a doctor that they had mass hysteria. That's what everyone believed anyway, but I knew it wasn't true. I've since been grounded by my dad. He thought that the 4 of us had done drugs or something. I couldn't get him to believe what really happened. I became distant from my friends after the incident. I just got through school and graduated without interacting with them too much. I've been traumatized ever since. I don't know what would have happened if my friends had got a hold of me that night. The story was inspired by an allegedly real incident regarding 4 Colombian high school students who were brought to the emergency room after screaming and babbling after playing the spirit summoning game known as Charlie Charlie, or the Charlie Charlie Challenge. They had been trying to summon a Mexican demon with 2 pencils balanced on a piece of paper, like a modern version of the Ouija board, daring a demon called Charlie to answer questions by making it point to pre-written answers on the paper. Doctors claimed that there was nothing physically wrong with them, and diagnosed a case of quote-unquote mass hysteria. Either way, the thought of the students being possessed over this viral trend is just downright terrifying. Last year, my husband and I went to Six Flags to have some fun at the water park. We hit the pool first, then we rode a couple of slides. There were a few more to try, but right as we were getting in line for the next one, my husband had to use the restroom. I offered to wait for him, but he told me it may take a while and that I should go on the ride myself. I agreed and made my way in the line up to a water slide called the Bonsai Pipelines. As I stood there waiting, a very large man, and possibly the world record holder for fattest man alive, got in line behind me, pushing up against me with his disgustingly ballooning stomach. I asked him politely to mind my personal space, but talking to him was a mistake.
Hey, do you mind giving me some space?
Sorry, my belly's got a mind of its own. I think he likes you.
I brushed the weirdo off and minded my business. As the line progressed, I realized that Bonsai Pipelines was a 2-person ride. Everywhere I looked in line, I saw couples, siblings, and friends all paired up. And at the top, people sitting together in 2-person tubes. That's when I noticed the plus-size man behind me smiling like a freak, showing me his rotten teeth from a lifetime of probably eating candy and washing it down with Mountain Dew, and also never being able to hold a toothbrush in his chubby sausage fingers. I was devastated. I knew I would be paired up with that fat creep. I considered leaving the line. That's what I should have done. But when I looked behind me, I saw multiple pairs of people in line behind us. I knew it wasn't going to be the best experience, but I sucked it up and stayed. Of course, this made the massive loser in line with me think I was starting to like him. Every time we moved in line and went up a step, that creep bumped into me. He almost knocked me over a few times. He kept talking about going on other rides together afterwards, and even suggested we go home together. I kept shutting him down, but he was just as oblivious as he was obese. I wasn't worried about it though. I knew I could easily outpace him at a casual walk if he tried to follow me. Eventually, we got to the front of the line. The employee tried pairing us up on it too, but I requested to ride the ride by myself.
Excuse me, but I would like my own tube. I don't want to be paired with him.
Sorry ma'am, but the tube will be imbalanced if you ride it without a partner.
Imbalanced? He weighs like 100 times more than me.
Don't worry, baby. I'll show you what's really heavy later.
Ugh, fine. Let's just get this over with.
I sat down first, and when he sat on the other side, I almost got launched into the air. I managed to hold on, but at the last second, I had a change of heart. That pig's bulging waist was spilling over onto my side and touching me. I couldn't stand it, but the employees pushed us down anyway.
Wait, no!
The next 30 seconds were the worst time of my life. His horrendous mask completely threw off the physics of how the ride was supposed to work. The tube repeatedly fishtailed, tossing me around so hard that my head was slammed into the wall of the slide again and again. Then, at one of the tight curves, the tube flipped over. Suddenly, I was stuck underneath the fattest man in the world, crushed underneath 1,000 pounds. I could feel my bones breaking and my organs being squeezed together. Water gushed out of his folds and into my mouth, drowning me. I prayed for it to end, thinking I was about to die. Then, at the bottom of the slide, the huge creep landed right on top of me. He shoved me to the bottom of the pool and stood on top of me, shoving my face into the concrete. Finally, he got off me, and I immediately struggled to swim up to the surface. I cried for help as I drowned because of my injuries, and that worthless, narcissistic mountain of a douchebag just walked away.
Help! Help me! I can't swim!
Thankfully, the lifeguard at the splash pool saved me from drowning, but everybody just let that fat piece of crap get away. I was taken to the hospital with severe injuries. I suffered a concussion. I had several broken ribs, my liver was ruptured, and my pelvis was broken. And the cherry on top was my broken nose, ruptured eyeball, and shattered front teeth. I had to be rushed into surgery. Despite filing a police report, nobody found out who the man was. I don't see how it could be that hard. There can't be that many men who weigh 1,000 pounds. Not to mention, my medical bills have financially crippled me for the rest of my life. A year later, my injuries have mostly healed, but I'm partially blind in one eye now, and I've been dealing with severe chronic pain. Due to the fact I can't sue a person I can't identify, I'm suing Six Flags for forcing me to ride with him. And what made things worse was how I wasn't able to have intercourse with my husband because of my injuries. And as a result, he's suing Six Flags for the loss of affection. The case is still ongoing. I don't know what will come out of it. All I know is that the freak of nature is still out there, and he might cause more damage if he decides to show up to another water park again. This story was inspired by a bizarre incident regarding a woman who was suing a water park because she was made to ride a flume with a fat person. Nikia Rose and her husband are seeking damages from Six Flags over Georgia Hurricane Harbor Water Park, claiming the 250-pound guest caused her serious injuries on a raft ride near Atlanta. The couple believe the added weight of the obese passenger caused the ride to become overloaded and dangerous, and landed Rose in the operating room. Rose was taking on the Bonsai Pipelines ride in the water park, which requires 2 people to ride in an inflatable raft down the flume. The claimant says it swayed violently with the heavy load on board, and slammed her into the interior of the tube, causing what she described as severe injuries. She said she was taken directly to the hospital in an ambulance. Rose has since decided to ask for compensation, and so has her husband for a loss of affection as a result of her injuries. The extent of Rose's injuries are unknown. I'll never forget what happened that night. It all started late one night. I was out at a bar by myself getting drunk. So, by the time it got to around 3 a.m., I decided that I should probably head home and get some rest. So I had one more drink and then left the bar. I probably should have gotten an Uber or a taxi, but I decided to drive myself home as usual. Plus, there weren't many cars out that time of night, so the risk was pretty minimal. Then, out of nowhere, this minivan swerved in front of me and cut me off. I had to slam on the brakes just to avoid hitting them. It was crazy. I was immediately upset and annoyed by the situation. They had the entire road to drive in, and they had chosen to cut me off like some dirtbag pieces of shit. I decided right then that I wasn't gonna let them get away with it without giving them a piece of my mind. I quickly sped up next to them and rolled down my window so I could start cussing at the van more.
Hey, you cut me off, you bastard! Who do you think you are, shithead?
The other driver didn't answer, and it was difficult to see inside as the windows were tinted, and it was dark. I figured he had gotten the point though, so I yelled one more cuss word at him and drove off, accelerating as much as possible to get away from him. I thought that was the end of it, but then, not a minute later, the van pulled up and cut me off again. They had to have gone over 100 just to get in front of me. Whoever was driving was a total lunatic.
Are you kidding me? This piece of shit! I'm gonna kill you, you freaking asshole!
I sped up and drove alongside them again so that I could cuss them out even more. I was so angry that I went completely insane. I was barely even watching in front of me as I sped alongside the van and kept screaming at them. I started spitting on the window and screaming even louder, but they still wouldn't respond. Finally, I decided that there wasn't anything else I could do. So I spat at them one more time and then sped off and cut off the van for good measure. I was feeling pretty good about getting them back when out of nowhere, the van slammed into the back of my car. That's when the minivan started bulldozing the back of it and pushing up on my vehicle.
Ah! What the hell? This guy's crazy!
I completely lost it after that and started screaming bloody murder. I thought I was going to die. It was like an episode out of Jeepers Creepers. We went on like that for several minutes. Then, we finally both came to a red light and the van miraculously let me come to a stop. They still stopped with their van pressed up against my car though. I figured that this was my chance to put an end to all of it. So I moved my car up a little and put it in park. But I was still so upset that I knew it was going to be a road rage incident. I felt hesitant to get out of my car, but I pulled myself together and stepped out to confront whoever it was. As I walked over to the van, I still couldn't see inside as the windows were too tinted. I stood there for a moment, expecting the driver to get out, but the van remained completely silent. That's when all my anger came rushing up to the surface again. This psycho was trying to run me off the road, but didn't even have the balls to come out and face me. I then started slamming my fist against the driver's side window.
Come out here and face me, you coward!
There still wasn't any response, so I started kicking and punching the side of the van in a total rage.
Come out here, you son of a bitch!
There was still nothing. I waited a few seconds, expecting the person to come out. Then suddenly, I heard the door from the other side of the van open. And that's when I saw the scariest thing ever. It was Mickey Mouse. It was a man dressed in a Mickey Mouse suit, like he had come from working at Disneyland. But it was no normal-looking costume. It looked absolutely terrifying. The guy just stood there, staring down at me like a gaunt psycho. I tried to stay angry and cuss at him some more, but I couldn't help but show fear in my voice. What do you want, asshole? You think I'm scared of you? It was a pathetic attempt to sound tough. He continued to stand there, staring at me. It was horrifying. Then, out of nowhere, 3 other cartoon characters got out of the van and stood beside Mickey. That's when they all charged at me. I tried to run, but they quickly jumped me. I began to panic as they all went insane and started kicking and punching me in a total frenzy.
Ah! Somebody help me! I'm getting jumped by mascots!
I tried to yell, but there was no one around to hear it. I just laid there on the ground while the cartoon characters continued to beat the shit out of me. I was sure that I was going to die then, but at the last second, the characters left and got back into their van. I was left on the ground in a bloody pulp as they drove away. Eventually, I managed to get into my car and drive away. Months later, I saw the whole incident caught on camera by another vehicle that had apparently driven by. It became a meme and a laughingstock on the internet. They don't know how horrifying that night truly was, though. I'm still traumatized to this day by Mickey and what he did to me. The story was inspired by a bizarre incident regarding a Russian driver who was attacked by a group dressed as cartoon characters, including Mickey Mouse and SpongeBob SquarePants, in a bizarre road rage incident. The unverified footage, filmed on another vehicle's dashboard camera, apparently shows the driver as he gets out of his vehicle and appears to be aggressive with the driver of the minibus. The group dressed up as cartoon characters can be seen sneaking around the side of the minibus before confronting the driver. The cartoon characters then appear to begin to confront the man in the middle of the road. The group soon begins jumping the driver who falls to the floor. Following the attack, which lasts for about 15 seconds, the group appear to get back into the van before it drives off. The man slowly gets back to his feet and makes his way back to his vehicle, as the vehicle from which the incident had been filmed drives past and continues on its way. The video is believed to have taken place around 2:30 a.m. on a Saturday morning. It is not known, however, whether the video is authentic or an elaborate prank, but nonetheless, a very bizarre incident caught on camera. When I was growing up in the Dominican Republic, my family was still poor. I hung out with some richer kids so I could get a chance to try out all the new stuff they had. One of these friends of mine was Eddie. His parents were exceptionally wealthy. At school one day, he invited me over to his house for the first time. He had the whole place to himself while his parents were out of town for a few days. The only catch was that Eddie wanted to do this challenge that had been going around on the internet called the Charlie Challenge. It was like a poor man's Ouija board that could only answer yes or no. It was a viral thing on the internet at the time, and Eddie really wanted me to do it with him. At first it seemed stupid, just 2 pencils on each other and a piece of paper with 4 squares saying yes and no. I agreed to do it even though I wasn't interested. But over the course of the rest of the day, I had this nagging feeling about it. Eddie told me to come in the evening because it was easier to summon spirits at night. I was extremely paranoid about messing with witchcraft and voodoo. I had never been superstitious and I tried to remain skeptical. But by the time I was leaving my house to go to Eddie's, I already knew it was too late to turn back. I rode the bus over to his neighborhood, then walked through it to his house. When I finally made my way to the front of the house, I knew it was time.
Is he even home? Come on, man. Please don't tell me I came all the way out here for nothing. Ah! Jesus! Who the hell are you?
Hey, I'm Diego. Call me Di for short.
Okay, Di. I'm Elliot. You can call me Eli.
Come on in, Eli. Watch your step.
Why is it so dark in here?
Spirits prefer darkness. I guess you don't know too much about them, do you?
Hey, I'm upstairs. Hurry up. I'm trying to play this thing.
Coming!
So where are we doing the summoning?
The attic, obviously.
Of course.
Up here.
I don't understand. Why are we doing all this? I thought this was supposed to be a simple challenge. And what's with the candles?
You naive little idiot. Did Eddie tell you this was a game? If he did, it's because he was afraid you'd wimp out.
What are we doing, man?
Have you not been listening this whole time? We're summoning a spirit.
Okay, well, then I don't think I want to be here. You guys shouldn't mess around with that stuff.
Shut up! You're staying and you're doing this with us. Don't make me hurt you, all right?
Okay, fine. I'll do it.
Hey, I set it up while you two were making out. You know the rules to this, right?
Yeah, we ask it a question, then the pencil balanced on top will move to say yes or no.
And do you know what to say?
Yes.
Then say it.
Come on, do I really have to?
Do it!
Okay. Charlie, are you there? Whoa, you did it! It actually worked! I don't like this, guys. What if Charlie's evil?
Would you just shut up, you wuss?
Charlie, may I play? Damn it. Well, I guess that's that. I'll see you guys downstairs.
Wait, I'm coming with you.
You're not leaving until Charlie says you can leave, dipshit.
Okay.
Now it's my turn. Charlie, can I play? Yes! Woohoo! Now it's your turn.
Charlie, can I play too? No, I don't want to do this.
Charlie, will I get laid this year? Damn it. I'm tired of using my flesh. Never mind. Your turn, loser.
Charlie, was summoning you a bad idea? Oh, that's crazy. See? I told you. What the hell? Why isn't it stopping? What's going on?
Ah! No, Diego! Wake up!
Diego? Are you alright? Did you just die?
Eddie! Fire! There's a fire! Eddie! Where are you? Eddie! There's a fire upstairs! We need to get the hell out of the house!
Eddie?
The story was inspired by a disturbing news article regarding a school called Juan Pablo Duarte Primary School in the town of Atomayor in the Dominican Republic. In a video of 3 students playing Charlie, the parents alleged that their children were possessed by Satan after playing the playground game. 3 students were absent from class because their parents believed they were possessed by the devil. The school is one of the various throughout the Atomayor region of Eastern Dominican Republic, a country where voodoo black magic is common, and that has been subjected to what one would describe as a satanic craze. Since then, there have been no further updates or reports on the 3 students.
This happened a few years ago when I was dating my boyfriend at the time named Jeremy. When I met him, he was obsessed with Kool-Aid more than the average person, and it wasn't just the drink itself. He had most of the walls in his house covered with Kool-Aid posters. It was weird as hell, but I just went along with it. I eventually moved into his house and really started to notice his unhealthy addiction to the red powder. It's all he drinks. Some days, he doesn't eat anything except spoonfuls of undiluted Kool-Aid mix. His teeth are chronically stained red and have slowly been rotting away for years. Unfortunately, since he has a remote job and works from home, he rarely leaves the house, which means he never has any reason to pretend like he's a normal person, so he never gets a break from the Kool-Aid. A few months ago, things took a turn for the worst when he ordered a Kool-Aid Man costume on eBay. The moment he put that thing on and absorbed the personality of the Kool-Aid Man, I knew that my boyfriend was a sick and mentally ill man. From that day on, Jeremy demanded that I called him the Kool-Aid Man. If I ever suggested that he drank something else, or if I ever called him Jeremy, he would snap at me. And since then, he would never take off the costume, not even to shower. And every single day, the stench that emanates from him became increasingly worse. He won't even take it off when we are intimate. The guy literally embodied the whole Kool-Aid persona. It was disturbing as hell. It was clear that he was suffering from some kind of mental disorder, but it didn't matter because he would refuse to get any sort of help. The guy thought he didn't have a problem and thought I was overreacting. I tried to accept the way he is, but after everything I've had to put up with over the years, his obsession was gradually taking over our lives. A few weeks ago, things got really bad between me and Jeremy. One night, he ran out of Kool-Aid, and since he can't drive with the giant Kool-Aid Man suit on, I've been making all the trips to the store for him. And when I told him that I wanted to wait until the morning, he threw a tantrum like a spoiled toddler. Despite being disturbed and afraid of what he might do as a fully grown man with no self-control, I stood my ground and we got into a heated argument. At a certain point, he started throwing things at me, and that's when I finally left the house and said I would get his stupid Kool-Aid if he would just calm down. I drove away, but I didn't go to the store. I circled the block a few times until I had to pull over and have an emotional breakdown. I called my closest friend and told her everything while I tried to collect myself. After almost an hour of conversation, she convinced me that it was time to stop enabling Jeremy's destructive habit. We made a plan of action for me to confront him, and once I was ready, I drove home without any Kool-Aid.
Sheriff's Office non-emergency hotline. Please direct all inquiries to our email or describe the situation you are reporting. Hi. I need an officer to come to my house. Ma'am, is this an emergency? No, I just need someone to be here in case things get bad. I'm scared of my boyfriend, and I know he's going to get violent. What's the address of your house, ma'am? It's 69 Oak Street in Spokane Valley. A deputy will be directed to your house and should arrive shortly. Are you currently at your house, ma'am? Yes, I'm right outside in my car. Listen carefully. Do not go inside your house until the deputy arrives. Remain in your car. Do you understand? Oh my god. Oh my god. I think he just saw me. Please hurry and send somebody here. Ma'am, stay in your car. Holy shit.
Where's my Kool-Aid, bitch? I need it now! Give me my magic dust!
I didn't get any! You need to stop this!
You're telling me you don't have any Kool-Aid? Do you want me to drink your blood instead? Oh yeah! Put the weapon down and get off the car right now! Do it before we tase you! Oh yeah? Oh yeah? All you bitches can drink my piss!
Jeremy was later arrested for attempted murder, and obviously, we are no longer together. As of now, he is still waiting for his trial in jail because he couldn't afford bail. I'm happy to know that he will be put away and get the help he needs. But after everything that happened, there is still one thing that will always remind me of him. Every time I pass by the Kool-Aid at the supermarket, I'm hit with flashbacks of that night. This story was inspired by a disturbing Kool-Aid incident regarding a 41-year-old actor named Jeremy Lindholm, who has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after attacking his girlfriend with a baseball bat over Kool-Aid. Lindholm was an actor on a series called The Twin Peaks, and reportedly fled the scene of the alleged attack while clutching the bat after the victim called the cops. Jeremy told the police that he had been arguing with his girlfriend before she headed out to get him Kool-Aid. When she failed to return, Jeremy became angry and went to find her. Police officers responded to calls that a male was at a location with a bat still in his hand as he fled, but that he had quickly given up when confronted by officers. They confirmed the incident was a domestic-related case. Lindholm has since been booked into jail and charged with attempted second-degree murder, second-degree assault, and several other charges, including assaulting the unnamed victim's friend. The victim was eventually transported by ambulance to a local hospital with non-life-threatening injuries.
In 2016, my life changed forever. I live in Kansas, and my family is fairly well off because my dad works in the state government. On Sunday in August, my brother and I convinced our parents to go to the water park. The only water park in the area was luckily a really nice one. When we got there, our parents let us loose and chilled at the pool with a submerged bar all day. We were both old enough to watch out for ourselves and each other, and we both had phones. The only conditions were that we had to stick together and call them when we were ready to go. My brother and I were good swimmers, but we decided to wear life jackets just in case. We stashed our phones and stuff in a locker and started roaming around. Over the course of the day, my brother and I rode almost every ride in the water park. Then we got to the one we were saving for last, the Verrückt. The name means insane in German. It's a 17-story tall water slide that makes you reach 70 miles per hour. Then you go up a big ramp that makes you feel weightless. You ride in a raft with two other people, so my brother and I wanted to ride it together. However, when I stood at the base of the tower and saw firsthand just how tall 170 feet really is, I had a change of heart. Something just gave me a bad feeling. I noticed there were no height or weight restrictions. It just didn't seem safe, so I changed my mind. I'm not going on that thing. It's way too tall.
Are you seriously pussing out right now?
Whatever, I'll wait for you down here.
You're such a wimp! You know you can piss in the water if you're too scared, right?
I immediately walked away and waited at the bottom as my brother got in line. It was a busy day, so it would be a while before he made it to the top. Every once in a while, my brother would look down at me from the stairs and shout at me. Mostly just some stuff about how I was a wimp, and that I was losing out on the most epic thing ever. I wasn't bothered by what he said. I was freaked out by how much higher he was every time I saw him. I just felt like there had to be a reasonable limit to how high you could go down a nearly straight drop like that on a water slide, and this was clearly past that limit. I watched dozens of rafts go down the slide, and I thought each one was going to kill the people riding it. Minute by minute, my anxiety got worse. I was trying not to be paranoid, but it's like I had this feeling of total certainty that the ride wasn't safe. I don't know how to explain why I knew. I just did. Finally, I snapped. I started screaming at the people in the line to walk back down. I didn't care if they thought I was crazy. I called my brother's name a dozen times not to do it, but by then, I couldn't even see him. He was already at the top. Then I heard him yelling at me, making fun of me for going nuts. I looked up and saw him getting into a raft at the edge of the drop. I knew there was always a few minutes of delay before the raft actually went down to the slide. So I ran to the nearby lockers to get my phone and call my mom. I told her to come to the slide and to tell my brother not to go through with it, and to hurry. But she seemed really drunk. She wasn't taking it seriously. She told me to calm down and that she'd be over in a few minutes. She didn't understand the urgency of the situation. She thought there was more time, but there was only seconds left. All I could do was watch as the gate opened. The raft slid over the edge, and then the unthinkable happened. I started panicking. My brother didn't survive. When my parents arrived minutes later, pushing through the crowd, They were devastated. As the raft tipped over the edge, there's usually a brief moment where it's not fully touching the slide. But at the same time, the leverage of the people in front hanging over nothing for a moment caused the back end to elevate slightly, causing the tragic mishap that involved my brother. It was mentioned that the raft rotated catastrophically and didn't correct. Half a second of free falling later, and my brother's head slammed into the metal safety net as the raft he was strapped into kept falling straight down, which ultimately ripped off his head. Every day I close my eyes, and I see that moment happen in exact detail. It doesn't help that the news story became nationwide news. I couldn't escape it for months, and even now, it resurfaces occasionally. When summer comes around, and I think to myself that I should go swimming to cool off, I'm reminded of the tragedy. My parents won millions of dollars in lawsuits, but no amount of money will ever be justice for my brother. This story was inspired by a horrific incident regarding a Kansas City male named Caleb Schwab, who was decapitated in a 2016 waterslide accident. This led to criminal charges of recklessness and second-degree murder against the owner, designers, and builder of the slide, which was billed at the time as the world's tallest water slide. However, a state court judge threw out those charges, as the dismissed charges were based upon improper, illegal evidence presented to a grand jury, ruled by the judge. Last year, Caleb's family was awarded nearly $20 million in settlement payments from 2 companies associated with the opposing parties. Since then, a court gave approval for the slide to be demolished.